Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I'm Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach. Today we're going to be talking about serial entrepreneurs. Now, many of us want to become entrepreneurs, many of us want to start businesses, but what does it mean to start multiple businesses? How do you hold all these businesses in your brain? So many of us suffer with doing one job. How do you have one job plus multiple things? So today we have a serial entrepreneur with us, Ashwin Bhadri. Now, I was on his podcast and that's how we met. And then we became friends. I was like, why don't you come on the Habit Coach and share your habits with us? So Ashwin, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast.
Thanks a lot, Ashdin. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. How did you get on this journey? Like serial entrepreneur, why? What keeps you going?
So I'm going to take you back to when I was 18. So on my 18th birthday, a few friends of mine asked me hey, what do you want to do in life? So that time I made a very weird comment, and as an 18-year-old, I told them, hey, by the time I'm 40, I want to have 7 companies. Now, I've never gone in any other place. I've not gone into details of why 7, because just before that, I knew I wanted to be successful. I know I wanted to do a lot of things, and I had read somewhere that hey, to be successful, you need to have 7 streams of income. So in my head, income means you have to have a business. Not investment, not anything else. It was business. So hence I made this statement, and I made a second statement saying that hey, at some point, whatever I do, I would want at least one of my companies to help improve water, food, and air quality in India. Because at that time, any of my friends who came from abroad, anyone who came in, used to always I can't have water from the house. I need only Aquafina or Bisleri, and I will only eat in 5 stars. And I was like, that didn't make sense to me. And I was like, I want to do something on those space. Hence, one of the companies, Equinox Labs. But it started on my 18th birthday, me saying this. And so after that, I was in US. I studied computer science. I did an MBA in marketing. I was the good son. Came back, joined the family business, worked in it for 6 months because I realized very quickly that I'm never going to have a name for myself. And the backstory to that is when I was 10, my dad had told me a concept of the sun and the moon. He's like, hey, you know what? The sun gives out light. The moon only reflects light. And so I was like, what does that mean? So he said, oh no, as you grow up, you'll get a lot of respect, but that's not because you've done anything, because you're still studying and all. It's a reflected glory. Just because we are doing things, you'll be, you're respected because of that. So you'll be the moon, but at some point in time, you need to become the sun. So this is from 10, when I was in 10th.
So this thought was seeded in your
It was
idea.
seeded in my mind. It's kept playing up, and he obviously brought it up a few other times, right? And so when I started working 6 months in, I used to go meet the customers of the company. The company was called Aquatech. My mom and dad ran this for when they started in 1980 is when they started this together. And it was India's 3rd largest water treatment company. And I joined as a executive customer care. He didn't believe in the concept of, the owner's son will become director and all. No, there was no designation. I had to give myself a designation. I had to create a department for myself. And I used to go meet customers. And anytime I met customers, I have a very unique last name, Bhadri. You don't see that very often. So the minute I gave them my card, they were like, one sec, I related to Mr. Satish Bhadri. And I used to be like, yes. Then the next half an hour, 1 hour, they are talking about him, how he bought something new, how he saved their job, how he saved the company, something or the other. War stories, as they I would call them, old war stories. And what I went there for was completely ignored, right? And 6 months, I did this 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. 6 months later, I realized, hey, I'm never going to be the son. And that's literally what I told him. And so the conversation wasn't a big drawn saga. It was literally a 30-second conversation with me telling him in these words, I don't think I'll be the son in Aquatech, because of which I think I should leave. And he agreed in a second. And because he understood that, right? And he was like, hey, he said one more thing. He's like, I don't want you to deny the pleasure of building something by yourself. Because obviously this is something that was ready-made and you're joining midway, but I don't want to deny you the pleasure. And I think I've not looked back ever since.
So you quit at what age?
So it's 24.
So you quit at 24, yes. And you started something at 24,
yes.
Or you
within a month,
for a year?
Within a month. Actually, not in 24. Coming to think of it, 23.
So you started something. What did you start?
A company called Equinox Labs. It was my first company, and the reason I started it was they were in water treatment. And while working at Aquatech for 6 months, I used to deal with a lot of laboratories across the country, almost 30, 40 labs, because we used to send samples and post. So after we install a water treatment plant, we have to get the water tested before we have to get it tested. So I used to work with a lot of these labs, and the level of service was pathetic. And I remember this one specific incident where I'm following up, like 20 days have gone by, we've not gotten the reports, and I'm calling the lab, and I'm talking to the actual chemist. I'm like, hey, where's the report? 2 din, 1 din mein aa jayega. And then I can actually hear something break in the background, like a glass test tube break. And he'll say, oh my God, acid. And I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I'm very sure there can be a better standard of doing things, better way of doing things. And that's when I started Equinox. And it was supposed to be a water testing laboratory. I remember I started with one person, one 5-foot table and a 200 square foot office. And the first teammate I got, her name was Mini Kurup. And till date, she's still in touch with me. And so we started from there. For the first 3 months, we couldn't do anything because...
Was Aquatech first customer?
You'd think so. It wasn't. While I tried to go to them, I also went to others. Aquatech wasn't the first customer. It was somebody else. It was a household. And that time, there was only 2 of us, me and her. So she used to do testing. I used to go do sales and customer care and everything, invoicing, everything. That lasted for about 3 months. 6 months later, we got one more teammate, so on and so forth. And we grew from there. And today, we are a 1,000+ people organization. Full-timers with part-timer people, we're almost 2,500 people, and we haven't looked back ever since.
And you're not doing water testing anymore. You're doing
We are doing water testing. We are doing water, food, air, environment, pharma. We are now into almost everything. So LEED and WELL certification for buildings. We are one of the best ones in the country for that. During the pandemic, we started a bunch of new things. One is called product claim validation testing. So, the 99.9% efficiency or, all of that. Preserves 40% more nutrition, all of that gets validated by us. And the beauty of that service, and the reason I'm very proud of that service, it was started without my involvement. They priced it, they launched it, they named it, they got the first 10 customers, and then my team came and showed me, by the way, we started this division. So I don't know why I'm so proud. Even that's not my biggest division. It's actually one of my smallest divisions. Fastest growing, but one of the smallest division. But the reason I'm proud is all that happened with zero involvement from me. That I think many people are like, one sec, how did they do? How did they price? What did they got wrong? I'm like, what if they got it wrong? They would have gotten it wrong. It's okay. But having that is key. And having that team is key.
I think the idea is that the entrepreneurship mindset seeds into the organization, right? So there's a word called entrepreneurs, right? Which is basically people who act like entrepreneurs inside a business.
But that's easier said than done. It's easier. So that does not, by the way, come naturally to most people. It did not come naturally to me either. Like, now I'm saying this in retrospect. But for the first 8 years, I don't think I had given up that much control. It's you have to mature to that mindset. Now people may be getting there faster. For me and my generation entrepreneurs, it was very difficult to let go. But the minute you realize that, hey, you know what? There are other people who care equally. The fear always is like, oh no, it's a teammate or an employee is not going to care as much. I don't think that's true, right? And the way to get them to care is, I think, very simple. One is you need to have a big vision of what you want your organization to do. How do you want to change the world? How do you see a different world? That has to be a strong thing, personally connected. Then when you're onboarding people, make sure that they believe in that same vision. Like they also want to see the world. Like for example, in Google, Googlers want to see the world where things are faster, more information is available, more people are empowered, and so on and so forth. And if they have the same vision as you and they are bought into that vision, then there will not be a big issue. And then obviously you have to make sure that the person has a right will. Skill can be developed. Will is very difficult to change somebody from a low will to high will. Somebody from a low skill to high skill we do every single day. I have not been very successful in turning a 1 out of 10 in a will to a 10 out of 10. I would rather hire a 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 and then maybe inspire them to go to 10 out of 10. But it's very difficult to get a 1 out of 10 and then inspire them to go to 10.
But how do you find will in a job interview?
That's a very interesting question. I think that unfortunately we've not been able to quantify that to a list of questions, right? It comes from a little bit more of a feeling. So each of our interviews is a little different. It's never that, here are 10 questions that we have to ask. Anyone at Equinox who will interview you, they'll obviously have the first 2-3 questions are standard, like, hey, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? But then we also ask very open-ended questions where there may not be a right or wrong, right? We're seeing how is this person thinking? How are they on commitment? How are they, like, if we give them a problem, how are they approaching that problem, right? Are they just giving up? Because sometimes the question is we know the person doesn't know the answer. How do you handle a situation where you don't know the answer? Like, do you guesstimate? Do you look it up? Right? So many a times we tell them, you can use your phone. Like, if you don't know the answer, go for it. Because in real life, you always have a phone, you have a laptop, you have a desktop with you, you have an iPad. So you have these available. In an interview also, you should have it available. Even when we have one of the largest tech teams for a laboratory. We have a 20 people tech team. No one in the country invests that much money in tech. When we ask them questions, and by the way, the questions we ask them are problems we're actually facing. It's not made up questions. Sometimes like, hey, how do you do this? Like, we actually don't know how to do this. So we're figuring this out, right? And we leave them alone for an hour or 2 hours. There's a full-fledged desktop available. Go use the internet, go call a friend, do what you need to do. Because in real life, that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to be able to call a friend, go on the internet, go on a forum or a Quora, whatever it is, and find out answers. Why not doing an interview? So that's something different that we do in interviews, that we allow people to use the internet. Hey, call a friend, don't know this? Hey, how do you do this test? Let's say it's for this. They may not know. Hey, how would you find out? Okay, I know you don't know because it's a new thing that's just launched. You don't obviously. How do you find out what it is? Oh, I'll go to this website. Okay, cool. Go to the website. Okay, no, it's a big document. How do you summarize the document? So, we see how they think. And that is important because you're never going to hire somebody who knows everything. But you should be able to hire people who know where to look, how to look, and people who don't give up easily. So one of the traits we look for is grit. Absolute key. If you want a high performer, I have not seen a single high performer, a teammate, an Equinox, you're not outside, who doesn't have grit. Means you fail, it's okay. You get up, move on. And so out of 10 questions, every Equinoxian would have failed in 2 or 3, but continued with more enthusiasm. That's important.
Okay.
People
so
who give up and
enthusiasm from one failure to the next.
Absolutely. That's the perfect definition of grit, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Now, Winston Churchill said this. But see, when it comes to entrepreneur, having that entrepreneurship mindset requires a person who's the owner to allow that to happen, but also there should be an ichha internally, right? Now, a lot of people listening to the podcast are people who are not entrepreneurs, but they are working in companies. So how do you think they should create that entrepreneurship mindset even in a job?
So there are 2 parts to this. The first part is your job should allow it. Your workplace, not your job as in job profile, the company you're working in should allow this, should encourage it, or at least not discourage you if you're the first one to, let's say you're a small, join a small company, 10 people. It may not even be the culture because the first 9 people did not have it. The founder did not set it up. So one is you need to be able to define where do you see yourself 5 years from now, career-wise, personally, professionally, but more importantly, even skill sets. And more important, somewhere even habits, right? You should have aspirations like, today, can I code and make a full-fledged app? No, I want to. I'm, by the way, learning. Do I need to learn? No, I'm learning. Why? Because today we run a tech team. I'm a techie myself. I used to code back in the day. I haven't done it maybe 20 years. But I used to code back in the day. I would love to kind of get back in touch. I'm improving my UI, UX skills by myself. So those are my aspirations that I want to be really good at it and do it with my own hand. We have teammates who do it. They do it better than me. But I somewhere also want to get good, right? So as a teammate, define very clearly what are the 3 skills that you should develop or your future version should have, right? So many times if I have one-on-ones with teammates, I normally ask them, hey, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Then they may give me a designation. I said, okay, you want to be a manager or you want to be a team leader. Okay. What do you think? What are the characteristics or what are the skills that you need to be that you don't have today? Oh, they'll write down 5 or 7. I said, are you, in the last 1 year, have you worked on these? No. How are you going to get promoted? How are you going to move ahead, right? Now, if you have too many, it becomes a little, you have to juggle too many things. I say, hey, every year, just take 3. Don't try and take 5, don't take 10, just take 3. And every week, do something to move from a 1 to 2 rating. Let's say you're a 1 on negotiation or coding or design. Just go to 2, don't try and do more. So what does that mean? So have that pathway kind of listed out and follow that. 2, at Equinox, what we do is we don't use the word managers. So there are leaders, there are team leaders, process leaders, so on and so forth. So every teammate has a leader. We always encourage people, hey, make this plan and share it with your leader. We do not tell leaders, you need to sit and make these plans because the person doesn't have it within them. You can't really sit on their head and get it done. It won't be right. Because see, there are some people who don't want to. They don't want to grow. Like I remember one of my best performing sales guys. Best means 100% on target, 100% recovery, which doesn't happen in sales. People cross 100% target, recovery is 50%, recovery 60%. 100% target, 100% recovery. So 1 year he did that, 2nd year he did that. We had to promote him. I went, I'm like, hey, we're promoting you. He said, oh, what does that mean, promotion? I said, oh, you have to manage a team of so many people. He's like, no, I'm good. I don't want to manage it. So he was very clear and I said, why? He said, no, I'm not going to be good at it. I'm not good at it. I work alone. I'm a lone wolf. Let me continue doing what I'm doing. which requires a lot of maturity. Imagine being offered a promotion and you saying no. It's like that much more salary, but you're like, no, I'm happy with what I am because I know I don't enjoy it, right? And the last secret sauce in this is when you hire people, always figure out what is their true passion. I remember there was this biochemistry girl who had come and she wanted to be a chemist in our lab and asked this one question, hey, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And 99% of people in the lab, if I interview, and most of these are freshers, they would say, oh, I want to be a manager. She said, I want to write a book, which is odd, no? I mean, biochemistry major, like writing, I want to write a book, I want to be an author. I'm like, 1 second, how is the chemistry job going to get you? Because you're qualified to be a chemist, you're a fresher, you have the experience, I can take you as a chemist. But I don't want to take you as a chemist, I want to take you in copywriting. But she's like, no, but I'm a chemist. I said, but you want to write a book, right? She said, yeah, I want to write a book. And that time we didn't have content writers, we didn't have copywriters. This is like 7-8 years ago. So I said, are you good at it? She's like, I think I'm pretty decent. So I told her, hey, write. I gave her a topic, I gave her half an hour. I said, write on this. She wrote a A4 size sheet. I read it and I was like, this is pretty good. So I said, hey, I think I would like to hire you as a copywriter. And I remember this line very clearly because I don't think anyone has said that to me after that. He's like, who in their right mind would hire me as a copywriter? I said, I would because you're passionate about it and you're good at it. I remember her saying, and I said, I would like to hire you. She said, yes, when do I start? Tomorrow. Thanks. And she ran out in joy. Didn't ask salary, what, nothing. She ran out because normally people wait for the let. She ran out celebrating, jumping. She was with me for about 4.5 years. We moved her to 8 different positions in the company, in a different company, because she was just passionate about what she did. She was passionate about writing. She was passionate about tech. She was my content writer, moved her to a different company for tech, bought her back in for something else. But see, that is where I think the key is. You match that passion and profession is where magic gets created.
So that's what you need to look at. One is upskilling, figuring out what you're passionate about and what you need to do to develop that passion internally. So it doesn't matter what company you're in, you can still start doing this internally. How do you move from one business to another?
That is so let me tell you how do we start a new business. Then I'll tell you how we move from one to another. So whenever we see an opportunity in the industry where we see a gap, a hole, and if we think that we are qualified to fill that hole, we will make a move and we will start something new. Now, what I didn't mention in my introduction was I've started 15 companies in the last 18 years. I've shut down 6. All those failures are on me. I don't blame my team. For a simple reason is either we ran out of money, the product was too early, or 3, I was not the right person to bring that product to market. So people talk about product market fit. I think a very important concept also is product founder fit. Is this the founder for this product? Somebody else in that place actually could have been would have made that a success. I wasn't the right person for it. I remember I started a BPO for engineering like 13 years ago. And I'm not an engineer. I got a few customers. I wasn't able to keep up the quality. I wasn't able to deliver on time because that wasn't my forte, right? A few years later, we started another BPO in an area that we are good at, customer service. We're very good at customer service, and that was doing extremely well. We understand software. Me and a business partner there, we are both software guys. We understand software really well. We are very process-driven people. That made sense. When I did it alone for an engineering thing, which is not my forte, it failed. So now, anytime we start something, these are the questions we ask, right? The second thing we ask is, hey, what kind of manpower are we going to need for this? What kind of brain power are you going to need for this? Do we have it? Do I have it? Does my business partner have it? Or do I need to hire it? If I hire who or this one person, then based on that one person, we actually create an entire plan and then we launch, right? Most of the companies we start, we actually give them 6 months to 12 months. If they don't turn profitable or they don't survive, kill. Very clear. About to survive, because anything I start needs to make money. I don't believe in that, let's burn for 3 years and 5 years and let's burn $500 million profit. That's not my method. I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just that I don't have the stomach for it. I know so many companies, billion-dollar companies, still still in the red, but that's their model. They're designed for it. They're growing. Obviously, they're run by very successful founders whose vision probably is much bigger than mine. Their risk appetite may be much bigger than mine. I don't have the stomach for, hey, last year we only won 500 million. I don't know what face I will show my investors, right? So in one of my companies, I do have investors. I don't know how to show my face. Somebody like, last year I just burned like 50 crores, 100 crores. I'm not going to be able to do that. So maybe I'm not built for it. But idea is once you see the niche, see if there's the right team in place and to run any company successfully, there are some very basic fundamental building blocks. That I think we figured out. Getting the right team, getting the right process, getting the right metrics, sales and marketing is absolutely key. By the way, you can have a B grade product and A grade sales and marketing and you'll still do well over an A grade product with B grade sales and marketing, right? So everything we built when we started it was in world class and it was okay. We got better to a point where it becomes world class, right? And how do we manage multiple companies? It finally comes down to getting the right set of people, getting the right process in place, getting the right metrics in place. So now for each of the companies, every week I get a report. It's called the S6 report. S6 basically stands for, this is something I learned from my mentor, Dr. Velumani. He's my mentor, personal mentor, and also was an investor at Equinox. S6 basically is last 6 days, last 6 weeks, last 6 months, last 6 quarters, last 6 years in a single view. You have no idea how powerful that is. It's one of the most powerful report formats I've seen. After getting used to that, anything else, I'm like, no. If they're like, oh, we got this new type, I'm like, S6, because you're able to see micro movements, you're able to see macro movements, seasonality, annual growth, quarterly growth, everything in one single view, extremely powerful. So that's, by the way, one of my secret sauce, also running multiple processes, multiple teams, is I think these 3 things.
But S6, over what parameters do you look at?
Exactly. Now, I typically, for any process or company, I look at only the top 3. The category head or the process lead would probably look at 5 or 10 and they would look at it daily. I look at it weekly or some cases monthly.
They also look at it as an S6?
S6 format. They may want more. They may want to go down to the customer level. Each line they will look at. I don't think I need to look at it because they have been trained on how to do it and what to do with it, when to raise the red flag, if there's something that's broken. But I think the parameters I think should be top 3. Now, for example, if it's a company, top line, bottom line, number of new customers added. This is typically the 3 things I would look at for any company. So I think that's important, right? If it's a specific process, like example, marketing. Okay, how many total leads did we get? How many relevant leads did we get? What was the cost per lead? Right? So now these 3 are enough because there will be 100 others, but at the end, they don't matter to me. For the person who has to tweak, yes, it will make a big difference, right? So let's say for my social media team, they will probably go into the weeds at how did this one post do, followers, non-followers. For me, it may be just a very macro thing that, hey, how many new leads did we get? Like, for example, when it comes to social, I don't care how many followers I have. It doesn't make a difference. It's like, hey, how much did we get leads? Did we get customers? Did we get engagement from our customers? Some random person liking my post, does it drive dollars to our bank? Not really. A customer liking our post, I still appreciate because we're still coming up on top of their mind, right? We don't sell anything online. So we're not a social media company. We're not an e-commerce company. But the reason we are very heavily invested on social, I read 3 podcasts. Why? I actually burn money every time we do a podcast. But anyone I interview, I get close to them. So I interview a lot of my customers. I interview so many non-customers. I interview people I find interesting. So when I started connecting the dots where I interviewed you, many people are like, one sec, this is nothing to do with business. I said, hey, but I want to learn from him. I wanted to learn from you. I've been following you for a while. I'm like, hey, I want to meet this guy one person and learn something new from him, which I did, right? So that's the idea. So there is personal enrichment. There is brand building, which I think is key. And last but not the least is whenever you enter a room, people will always be talking about, hey, I saw your podcast with so and so. There's always something there and they always look up to you, right? So now how do you measure that in social media? You actually can't. Like I tried putting a metric to this, like recognition, like when I go meet somebody. But the intangible metric there would be if I go for any meeting, 99% of the times people they will bring up, oh, I saw a video of you with, or I saw you talking about, which I think automatically raises the bar, right? So, but for every process, I think every leader should minimum look at 3 metrics on a daily basis. And the higher up you go, you probably look at it less often because there was a point when I used to get 25 reports just from one company every day. What am I supposed to do with 25 reports every day, right? So sometimes lesser is better. Correct. So the times I'll ask for a report once in a month, but that's immediately linked to a meeting, to a review, which helps tremendously.
So now you have 6 businesses, right? So when you were shutting off the businesses, what goes through your mind? Like like sometimes it's a failure, sometimes it didn't work. Like emotions, how do you deal with that?
It is an emotional roller coaster. One, because you're letting people go. For me, it's not. I would not cry over financial loss, But the fact that, hey, I let the team down, or we hired these 10, 20 people, they were there for the 6 months, 1 year. Everyone is aware of the risks. They're given enough time to leave and find jobs and all that. Because many a times when we see, like in our company, if somebody is not performing well, there's a process called PIP, process improvement plan. So when a company is not doing well and it's on this thing, we actually put the company on PIP. So everyone knows, hey guys, here's 60 days. This is the metrics we need to reach. If we don't reach these metrics, we will be shutting down, right? And then you'll have 30 days or 60 days to move on. So those processes are set. However, that doesn't take the emotion out of it, right? It is an emotional roller coaster. One, you're letting people down. Those families depend on you. So you do the best you can for them. So many times what happens is, at least now we've reached that size, that we just absorb, if they're good people, we just absorb them in other companies. Because see, sometimes it is the people who didn't work. But many times, hey, the product is too early. People were good. So why waste good people? So we quickly absorb them in other parts of our business. But what is little more difficult to deal with is the internal self-doubt that gets created. Like, because you also let yourself down, right? You thought of, hey, this can be a big thing, but it wasn't. People didn't pay for it, or it didn't become viable. Coming out of that, back in the day would have taken me 6 months. Now it takes me 1 week, lesser than that, maybe a day also sometimes. So what has really helped is figuring out a very simple truth of life. I think the truth of life has been that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it. I have not seen a single successful person who has not failed. So I think that gives me some solace ki, hey, I'm not the only one who's failing so many times, right? Now, like in the last 2 years, I've actually stopped making new companies, by the way. Now we just create new projects or those mini companies within our companies, and we call them special projects, right? So sometimes special projects can even go as high as 40 people becomes a special project. We hire 40 new people, which is a whole company by itself. But we call it a special project because the companies have become large enough where we can start a mini 40 people, experiment within a thing. The most important part is anytime we have a failure, we all take, the executive team will take out time and write a 1-page, 2-page summary of 1, what we did right, and 2, what went wrong, and 3, next time if you have to do this same thing again, how do you do it differently, right? And by the way, till now, 2 of our biggest successes have been failures in the past that have come back and became successes because we were able to identify what we did wrong. I'll give an example of this. About 8 years ago, we had launched something called the hygiene shield, which was, the idea was for restaurants, you don't know what's behind the kitchen. So we as an auditing company, we would go audit your restaurant, and if you're good, you pass, you get a physical hygiene shield that gets put onto your, this thing. We spent a lot of money, developed the tech around it, we developed marketing material, we went to the market, spent good 20-30 lakhs on ads and blah, 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 blah. We didn't even sell 10. And when I got down to it and I spoke to everybody, they said, all the restaurants, they said a very simple thing. Hey, it makes sense what you're doing, but it's not going to help me increase my revenue. I'm like, what do you mean? You're getting certified in hygiene. He's like, yeah, but what? The guy's already come to my restaurant. Now he sees the shield. How's it making a difference? So that was the big learning. Fast forward 4 years, I took the same concept to Zomato. Spoke to Dipender and his executive team about it. And we were able to convince him that it makes sense. We were able to do it at 1/5 the price. 2, Zomato was selling it. And most importantly, that little hygiene shield showed up inside Zomato's app as a differentiator. So now if you're a restaurant with a shield, I'm a restaurant without a shield, you had a 26% higher order through rate. Everything else same. You're selling Chinese, I'm selling Chinese, you're selling 200 rupees, I'm selling 200 rupees, you have a hygiene shield, 26% more sales. We did tens of thousands of audits. We went from 25 auditors to 700 auditors in 6 months.
Wow.
That was a huge because we are like, hey, the concept is good. We know the concept is good. It's just that we were not able to drive traffic to the restaurant.
Business model changed.
The business model changed, but it worked. Concept is the same, right? So that is important. So not giving up on it. So many times in the failure, sometimes the concept could be wrong, early, designed in a boardroom with no validation from customers. So that's a mistake we've made in the past. We've launched companies, we've launched products. In the conference room, yes, this makes good sense. I know we'll price it like this and make so much sense. I did one very recently, beginning of pandemic. We created this thing called hygiene quotient, thinking, I was like, hey, you know what? Now hygiene is even more important. Everyone will want to monitor hygiene levels and we will create this app and da-da-da-da. Big failure. Big failure. Why? I did it literally in my bedroom on a blackboard thinking, oh, I know more. I didn't know more. Now, anytime we create something, we will talk to a minimum 100 people, let them know the price. We actually make a presentation as if the product is real. Nothing has been created. Like we launched Food Founder Ecosystem, we launched a couple other things as well, Compliance Cloud and all. We went to customers saying with the logo, with everything, as if the product is made, screens designed, like there's no app, we just made design of the screens. This is what we're launching, guys. This is the price point. It's launching in 2 weeks. Would you buy it? Yes, we would buy it. This price point, yes. Out of 100, if 51 say yes, we launch. If even 49 says, 51 say no, we don't launch. Either that or we go back to the board, redevelop the proposition, maybe look at the pricing and look at the design, look at the value add, go back. Once we get to 51 and more, we're able to launch, and that has been a good indicator of success.
Yeah.
And so now when we know that these processes are there to dampen our fall, now failing is no longer as bad and no longer feared. And weirdly enough, look forward to it.
Because of the learning experience. Like what you were saying, so many entrepreneurs make the mistake of saying that I'm building this product for people like me, right? And so my family business is market research, right? I'm market research at Ormax. And at Ormax, we always found with entrepreneurs, no, this is something that, me and my wife like, so that's why we're putting this out. But then you take it to customers and then they show a different aspect of this, so they'll view it differently. And it's important to get that validation. Like even so many people might be listening to this that want to start a side business while they're doing their job, etc. You have to take that product and do a research on it, identify what people like, what people don't like, and then move forward from there. And like you said, failure is a part of it. There's masti maja in it. You came for the book launch of One Habit a Day, right? So there were 120 people at that book launch. When we were doing a few book launches for Change Your Habits, Change Your Life, there were 3 people. Right? And luckily, I didn't feel bad because I had spent time reading about authors, and there was one author that I love, Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. And they had this quote that said that for one of our books, 0 people turned up for the signing.
Oh, wow.
And I'm saying if authors of that magnitude have 0 people coming up for the signing, like 3 people coming up is like infinite more in terms of numbers. I was like, fantastic. So you suddenly realize that, okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? How do I change the process from this? I think that learning aspect is so critical especially when you're an entrepreneur.
100%. So one habit which I developed about a decade ago and which I think has served me extremely well is I do not go to sleep if I have not learned a new thing. And I write it down, right? Over the last few years, I found an app that you can capture this in. It sends a reminder. I have a reminder on my phone every night, 11:30 pop-up comes. If I have not filled it out, then I have another half an hour to learn something new. And something new, when I say learn, it doesn't mean work. It means something new. It can be about politics. It can be a new recipe. So during the pandemic, a lot of my learnings were recipes. Like how do you make fried rice, jeera rice. I learned something called tornado omelette. Like I learned like fluffy French omelette, whatever. So a lot of the learnings are actually even recipes.
The chopsticks, the tornado.
The one that goes out. That was a good one, right? Gin fusion is a learning. Gin and Sonic was a learning, right? So learning can be in every field, but that habit of learning new things should not go. So every time I meet Equinoxians, I normally ask them a couple of questions. 1, what have we learned new? And 2, what have we failed at in the last 1 week? Now, that is an extremely powerful statement, by the way. If the founder is asking everyone, hey, what have you failed at in the last 1 week? And when people give an answer, and if it's a good, if they give it a good try, I would stand up and give them a round of applause. Do you know what that did in the company? People are okay with failures. Now, how do you make people okay with failure? You just ask people, like, what did you fail at? Celebrate failures. So back in the day, if somebody failed, they would hide it under the carpet. Hopefully, nobody asks about the project. It'll just go away. But if you celebrate failure, it's fantastic, right? We call it fail forward fast. But coming back to the learning, fail forward fast, right? But the learning a day is such a powerful habit. And I think that is something anyone who wants any kind of success in life, and when I say success, I don't mean monetary, any kind of success. It could be health, it could be mental health, whatever it is, right? Peace. That habit a day is critical, which is why when you said the 13 habits, 31 days, 13 habits in a month, I was like, boss, this is, absolutely, this is something I want to learn, because obviously while that one learning a day is good, developing new habits is absolutely critical.
Yeah. and at least changing your mindset. Like, for example, the book is all about looking at life a little teda. Can I look at it through this lens? Can I look at it through this lens? And then that's how actually your mind develops and you learn things and you progress. So tell me some of your habits that you had a few years ago and how have they changed to the habits that you have now as an entrepreneur?
So I think, so let me start in my personal life and then I'll move to my professional life. So in my personal life, a few years ago, I would not work out every day. I would maybe go for one workout a week, maybe twice, sometimes, maybe three, but then nothing. It was more mood based. I basically now go for a workout at least 6 and most of the time 7 times a week because I've linked it to something else. So for example, every day I get up to get my kids ready for school and their school bus comes down. So when I go to drop them down, I go in my gym clothes. So I have no choice, but stupid for me not to go to the gym. Gym is in the building. So something of that nature. That is one. Two, let's say in my professional life, habit that I used to or not have was I was horrible at praising people. So when there's a problem, when there's a shitstorm, people will come to me. And obviously that time people are getting it left, right and center because somebody dropped the ball. But then I realized, hey, you know what, I'm not good at, okay, take it. And they take it also because they know they did something wrong. But I'm not good at praising people. So now somewhere slowly and steadily I've started getting good at it. And the way I've done it is, I'm like, you know what, 1 second. Why do all these bad things come to me? Because a flag goes up, say something went wrong. A red flag goes up, something broke. Customer email, anger, during an internal audit, something came, whatever, right? I said, 1 second, can we also set up something as a green flag? Somebody did something well. Can we set that up? And we set that up. Now, today on groups, even something small celebration, like small victories are celebrated. They get called out. Now, a new sales guy join his first sales is called. First sale could be 100 rupees, doesn't even matter what it was. His first sale is called out. His 10th customer is called out. 100th customer is called out. And those are small victories that we celebrate, me as a person with them, as a team, as a company. And I think that has been it's a small but such a large impact habit, right? A habit, now a company-wide habit is a few years ago, we developed core values as an organization. All organizations have core values. They're on their website. It'll be in the ISO documentation, mission, vision, core values. Everyone has it, right? But less than 0.1% of those organizations actually, if you ask anyone what those core values are, would actually know it. So when we launched core values, I did one thing differently. We didn't put them up anywhere. We just bought it up in every meeting. Slowly, after a few months, I started seeing those in emails. Slowly, I started seeing them on WhatsApp. Slowly, I started peopling from one team, people from one team emailing somebody else. So our 6 core values are, one of them is we have fun while serving others. Another one is we help each other succeed, which is the most popular one for teams. So this team will email this team because this team went out of the way and did something for them. So a teammate from here will email them saying, hey, you know what, thank you so much for helping me out of this. We help you succeed. So once that starts getting verbalized in day-to-day communication, that habit becomes again powerful because end of the day, when people talk about culture, company culture, which is by the way a tenet if you want to be successful as a venture, company culture is key, right? We'll talk about that a little later. But the habit of bringing up core values, right from a founder to every single Equinoxian, brings up core values almost on a daily basis. And that habit to instill took maybe a year or two, but I think is one of the best business habits we've been able to put into play. So I think that
because everyone's thinking the same way then.
Everyone's thinking the same way. When a new person comes in, what does he see? What he sees around him is culture. So if he sees, hey, now there is a wall which will have core values and it's there in induction and all that. But that is great, which happens again in many companies. Induction will be covered. But if he sees, next day morning review, my boss is bringing it up. My colleague just said something and he's bringing it up and it's a core value. He knows that is the culture. He will bring it up. And the minute you start talking about it that often, it gets ingrained in you. So one is you're practicing it. Two, you're seeing people around you practice it. I don't know if what else is a better definition of work culture is people are actually nice to each other, helping each other grow, succeed, hitting their own personal targets of whatever sorts. I'm not saying company targets, their personal targets. Because one of our core values is we deliver great results. Another one is we continuously improve. So when we review people, we benchmark them not against target, we benchmark them against their last quarter. Hey, where were you last time versus where are you now? Yes, obviously we look at where you're supposed to be, but have you improved? If you're improving and your graph is going up, that's great. If it's not, then we need to have we need to look at it a little more seriously. So that company culture and that core values coming up, that habit has been a life changer for us.
But like when you have 6 companies, do all 6 companies share the same core values?
Yes, they do. Because when we were designing these, there was a conversation around this that, hey, should we have same? Should we have different? So I'm like, finally, what are core values and how do people talk to each other? How do people interact with each other? Why would it be different in any of our companies? No matter what we do. We have a chemical business also. We have an NGO also. We have a real estate piece also. We have a BPO also. We have labs, which is the biggest one. But people are common. Not common. Some teams are common. Some resources are shared. Some people are in the same building. Why should we have different core values? So that was by the way, it's a conversation we had and very, very strategically we chose to have the same core values because end of the day, sometimes even leadership people will move from here to there. Founder is common. Leadership people are moving. Teammates are moving. Why have different core values? Like imagine you're in Equinox Labs, different core value, you come to Million Lives and there's something completely different. Because by the core value dictates culture. So as a group, our culture is pretty strong. And if we had different core values, I don't think we would be able to pull it off.
Correct.
So, because now people also become movable because you know how that leader is going to behave. The leader is already aligned. Now imagine I had 5 core values here and 7 different core values here. If I move the leader, now he's in a different culture. He either may thrive or he may not be able to. But now when I move people, it's natural for them. Even now our reporting styles have become the same. Everyone looks at data S6-wise. Our reporting cadences, our meeting cadences are similar. So that helps. So having those again, because now for us that has become process. Because how do you sustain high growth? How do you sustain multiple things? Your process is in place. It can't be everything is doing something very different. Then it's impossible to manage.
I like to think of company processes as company's habits, right? Because you think of them as the habits of the company and the routines of that company.
Absolutely.
But how do you instill processes into a company? Like how do you actually get around to creating those processes and making sure people follow them?
So the first step is what is the end point, right? So any process, typically I look at it as a black box. There's an input and there's an output, right? What is your input? Is it defined? What are the parameters? Like for example, we create something called a handover. If you give us an order, the backend handover is created because a different team takes over, right? What inputs are given there? Oh, these are the 8 inputs that are given there. Now those have to be standardized. Means your input, if anything is missing, this process will actually reject your input saying, hey, we are not going to execute your order. You missed out on deadline, you missed out on quantity, you missed out on amount, whatever it is, whatever the 8, 10 inputs are, right? Then what is the output? Oh, I'm supposed to, let's say, pick up my sample and bring it on time to the laboratory. In between, what am I supposed to do? That gets listed out. What are the possible branches it can have? Now, for example, it's a simple pickup from your house. There's a process. Hey, there's a call that goes to you. We confirm, hey, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Oh, 8 o'clock, my collection doesn't show up. What happens? Oh, there's a branch for that. Oh, he shows up on time. Then what happens? Okay, he reaches your place. So then he goes to the app. How does he reach your place? So now it starts getting defined at that level. Like today, everything is tech-enabled, which helps. But when we designed processes, nothing was tech-enabled. So everything was paper-wise, right? So we first have to write down what are the ideal steps. Where can this break? When it breaks, what do you do? And everyone who's supposed to be in that process is empowered to take decisions because already pre-understood there, if this happens, this can happen. Like, oh, if the guy is late, can he take a cab? Oh, the samples are more, can he do this? So all that is now written down. It's all in black and white.
But these would have been semi-failures at some point of time to become part of the process.
Yes, because see, the first time you do it, can you envisage everything? No. So many people think, hey, let's get it just right, then we'll document it. You're never going to get it just right. Never ever you're going to get it just right. It's always going to be, every SOP of ours is a work in progress. It's never like this is it. Every SOP gets reviewed. Anytime there's a failure, we go back to SOP, see, hey, is this what needs to be updated so it doesn't happen again. See, when you fail, it's okay to fail. So I keep saying this all the time. It's okay to fail once in that thing. Second time, there's some stupidity. You failed once, you did something new or you tried something and it didn't work. It's okay. First time you failed. Why? Because something broke, you forgot, whatever. How do you not forget? How do you not check this, whatever? What are those checks and balances? So our SOPs get updated on a weekly basis across the org.
And this is you doing it? Do you create processes?
No, not anymore.
You create a process at some point in time?
Yeah, of course. A lot. Like hundreds, thousands, right? Because that's where you started. But now the good part is, see, if you want to grow, whether it's multiple organizations, in one organization, multiple people, you have to create more people who have that same level for eye for detail, same process-oriented mindset. Now, many of my current leaders didn't have that when they joined me. They were high on will, the skill they didn't have. Today, all of them have the skill. Because we've instilled this skill in them. I've personally instilled that skill in them. This is what you do, write it down, So today, I don't need to create them because they know how to do it. Some of them may know better than me also. Like, for example, we run a lab. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a microbiologist. My lab head knows more about running a lab than me. Right? She manages 6 different labs across the country. There are 2 labs I've not even stepped foot in. I've not stepped foot. I think she's at least stepped foot in them. But again, how do we know they're running fine? There are processes in place. Opening checklist, closing checklist. So the step 1 is creating SOPs SOPs. The second, there has to be an audit mechanism, a check mechanism of is it being followed? And that is key. A lot of people, a lot of companies will take that step 1, they write it down. And they're like, oh, things are breaking. Yeah, because you're not checking back in to see whether people are following processes. See, people will finally take the easiest route to get to the outcome, right? A good example is when we created our software, it's called Hub, that runs, entire Equinox Labs runs on Hub. There was also a thing that, oh, you know what, if this thing is not there in Hub, now you can do it in Excel. 95 people did through Excel. And one day we are like, no, 0. Breaks, you break there. If you did the thing, next step broke, not your fault. I'm not holding on. I'll hold my tech accountable because they broke. But today, there's no Excel, there is no printout, there is nothing. Everything is app enabled, app first. Like every process of ours is app first. Like even from HR is app first. Number of calls, everything is now tracked, everything is online. Allows scalability. See, the minute you create a process and you create this review mechanism, and this is the fastest way of doing it, this is the easiest way of doing it. It would be stupid for somebody else not to do this. 2, it will not be possible for somebody else to even do anything because this is the only input to the next process. See, everyone does work. They move the thing from here to here, input to output. If their output is not going to be consumed by the next person,
what's the point?
And the easiest way of doing it is through their app or through the process. They're going to follow it. You give them a different way and it still works. Like Excel works. Everyone do Excel. But today our softwares are so good, people don't want Excel. Because it actually takes more time. Like right now also, till a month ago, people used to use Excel. I'm like, what are you using Excel? To slice and dice data. They're like, oh, data is there, everything is there in our softwares, but we need to see a different view. This versus that versus that. I'm like, whatever view you want, you tell tech. Now a team whose entire job is to create reports. Because now we have so much data. Now they just create reports. Now if anyone asks for a new report, 24 hours available. Is there. Now, is it better every day the guy will download Excel and do the pivot and all, or will he just go click and
data?
So that becomes important, right? So because one very important part of human behavior is they'll always take the easiest way out. Your easiest way out should be your process. That's how you get compliance faster and you're able to scale. And when this comes in, you get scalability.
Correct.
Lesser mistakes, or newer person can come do the same job without mistakes and hitting that expectation that you need. So
yeah, I think you can grow much faster when the process is in place and it's, like you said, simple to follow. It's not crazy.
It's not crazy.
Now, you've started all these things. You started a podcast. Tell us a little bit about the podcast and tell us some of your favorite conversations that you've had on it.
So, the podcast was supposed to be actually a book. And the concept was breaking the ceiling, where I wanted to interview people who've done something different and, have broken the ceiling. And the book didn't happen because of the pandemic began and I just didn't get around to the book. But the concept was still around and people, like my team was like, hey, the concept is still good. Can we do a few interviews? Right? So we started, I remember my first interview was with Pooja Dingra, LA 15. And we did on Zoom. And because that time pandemic was still going on, we were in the thick of it. And that was supposed to go online. And we did it and I sent it to her for approval. I'm like, hey, I have this water. She's like, no way in hell are you putting the Zoom thing because it looked horrible. So she insisted on saying, Ashwin, this has to be done in person. I'm like, pandemic. She's like, I don't care, we'll figure it out. So I remember still doing it in the den, which you've come to, which is the den, the studio, my office we did it in person. Everyone else is wearing masks. Me and she were wearing masks till the interview started. And so that was one of my first interviews that I did, which is very memorable. The reason for me to start podcasting was meet new people, learn new things from them. For many people who I've interviewed, many of them haven't been interviewed anywhere else. And those interviews sometimes are the best because they have so many untold stories, right? So one of my recent ones, which kind of pops out, is with a person called Ritu David. I think you also know Ritu. And she actually just came over for a coffee. She's like, hey, I'm coming for a coffee. Somebody introduced us. We're supposed to do some work together. That work didn't happen. But she came over for a coffee and it was actually a shoot day. So I'm like, hey, why don't you have a seat? And we started doing the interview. And it was the funniest interview I've done till date because she was telling me things like I've gone on 231 first dates. That she's ex-Australian intelligence. She's ex-CIA. And mind-blowing stuff. We discussed work also, but some of them are mind-blowing. Another favorite interview of mine is with Dr. Velumani, who's a mentor of mine. And that interview went on for a good 1 hour, 45 minutes. I think that's my longest. Interview. My second longest, by the way, is you.
1.5 hours.
1.5 hours, right? And I'll talk about your interview just in a second. So with Dr. Velumani, that interview was very personal for me because I've obviously known him for a long time. And he's known for these punchlines. And I was able to, in that single interview, capture almost all of his punchlines. And to a point where I told him, hey, this is a book. I'm going to turn this into a book or we're going to make a video with just your punchlines because his punchlines literally distill so much knowledge and intelligence in a sentence or two. If you listen to his punchlines and follow them, you're done. You're sorted.
Do you remember any examples?
So one of his examples, very weird one. He's like, it was about when do you start a business. He's like, माँ बनने की एक उम्र होती है. Like entrepreneur बनने की भी एक उम्र होती है. Like his point was, there's a right time. Don't start off just out of your college. Go work somewhere. Learn those skills. Get paid to learn those skills. Like somebody else is paying for your mistakes, right? Yeah. Learn some those skills and then start. This was just one of them, right? And many of these them are in Hindi. But this was one. But like this, so many life lessons that he was able to share. And my third one was with you, which was so much fun. I remember my normal podcasts are like 30 to 45 minutes and it went on and on to a point where the next guest had come and he was sitting over there and we were supposed to try the gin siphon, which we got to. That became a whole party, by the way, right? So that was an interesting story. But I learned so many new skills from you. How do you look at problems? How do you look at habits and look at them very intentionally? I think that is something that high-performing people need to bring into their life, that what are the habits I want to develop, literally write them down and get down to doing them or get help to doing them. Because there's a famous quote that goes, right, hey, you don't become successful. You develop successful habits and those successful habits make you successful, right? So finally, habits make a person. So hence, that was my third most memorable interview was actually with you.
Thank you. So Ashwin, how can people listening to this podcast, one, interact with you, connect with you? How can they go listen to your podcast? Where are they available? Tell us a little bit about all of that.
So the best way to reach me is LinkedIn. My name is quite uncommon. So you search my name, there's only one person who comes in. LinkedIn, Instagram.
No, technically there were two, no? You had one fake account that came up.
So I finally made it, right? As somebody called it. Somebody, the first person to tell me was, hey, I think you finally made it. I'm like, what happened? Somebody made a fake account.
Yeah, someone made a fake account of you with 3,500 followers.
Exactly, in 2 weeks. I was like, 1 second, I'm not growing that fast. How is this person growing so fast? And so just Ashwin Bhadri on LinkedIn, Ashwin Bhadri on Instagram, or my email ID is ashwin@equinoxlab.com. So just on that. That's one way of reaching me. Another thing that I'm able to do for a lot of food founders or founders is a skill that I have is ability to scale things, right? So a lot of times when I do mentoring sessions, I look at, hey, is your business scalable or not? Do you want to scale it? Is it scalable or not? And if it's scalable, how do you scale it? So those are maybe the 2-3 questions I can answer for people. The third one obviously gets stretched out a little more because now there's operational nitty-gritty into that, right? So that would be how to reach out to me and how I can possibly help people.
Amazing. Podcast name, where to find podcast?
The podcast name. So the first podcast I started was called Breaking the Ceiling. It's available on Spotify, Apple Music, all the Jio7, all the places. And this podcast, even though it was supposed to be sector agnostic, over time it became very sector focused because this is a podcast mainly in which I have food founders, right? It wasn't designed to be that way, but that time I knew only food founders, so I got all of them together. The second podcast is called Unboxing Success, in which I interview people who've sold their businesses. So I've interviewed, let's say, Dr. Velumani, I've interviewed Arjun Vaidya from Dr. Vaidya's, and we have a few more planned out. And the third one, which is one of my favorites, is called Connecting the Dots, which is people who are not food entrepreneurs, who have not sold businesses, but people who are very interesting for me personally. And so the three are Breaking the Ceiling, Unboxing Success, and Connecting the Dots, and they are available on all
The
platforms, Apple, Spotify, Jio, Ghana, Savan, all of the places.
Amazing. So happy that you came and we finally did our podcast together here. And welcome to the studio.
And thank you so much for having me. And I've been waiting to have this chance with you because we keep meeting offline. But I think these conversations are, very enlightening. And so I have actually a question for you. As a founder, as a CEO, what do you think a successful founder or CEO, what habits, maybe the top 3 habits that they should have?
The first one is to look 5 years ahead. Many people don't have that. And it's scary how many founders, CEOs don't think 5-10 years ahead. So they're always looking at what is the next problem that is coming up, what is the next problem that is coming up. So I think that is one. The second is most CEOs and founders don't focus on themselves. So as a result, they don't realize that they are the company's biggest asset, the company's biggest machine. And if you spend crores and crores and crores in buying a new machine, you spend on almost nothing on yourself. So I think that's the second one. And the final one is understanding that why are you doing this business? So if you have, so there are people who are very clear that I want to make money, fantastic. But if you're not clear on why you're running this business or why you're doing this business, all hell's going to break loose. So having these 3, I think, are essential for a person who has a business or a CEO.
Fantastic. And my last question is, what is your next project? I know there's some stuff brewing.
I think the funniest thing is that as soon as you finish something and you celebrate it, the next question is what next? I mean, like, abey, dhakkan log, like, let me finish this one thing, let me celebrate it. Right? Like at the book launch, somebody said, what is the
What's
next?
What's
next on the list? So I think next on the cards, something that I'm very, very excited about is one, using AI to move away from just doing English content. So how do I make all the stuff that I'm doing with regards to habits available in Japanese, Chinese, Russian, Tamil, Hindi, because AI now has that ability to. So I'm just discovering this. And the second part is, how do you help instill habits in people that they know what they want, but now how do you help them through those? So I think these are the projects that I'm currently starting.
I love how Japanese came first.
No.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. This was amazing.
My
amazing
pleasure.
experience.
And I love how the little podcasting host came up with you
I was
and you had to ask a
about to say
question.
that that's there. It came out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
If you like this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, give us a rating. It really helps with people discovering the podcast. If you like podcasts like this, check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can also watch all the episodes on the Habit Coach Awesome 180 YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, everywhere. You can also reach out to me. I am Ashdin Doctor at Twitter and Instagram. You can connect with me on my website, awesome180.com. You can also check out my 2 new books, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life, and the second, The Book of Good Habits for Kids. I am Ashwin Doctor, your habit coach.
IVM.